If Tales from the Crypt didn't provide you with enough sex and violence, then Masters of Horror is here to deliver. Better yet, to quote Robert Englund's character in Dance the Dead,
"Let me caution those of you whose nerves are not what they used to be. Get the f***!
Let's just start by saying that Mick Garris is a treasure to horror. He's someone I could probably listen to for hours. He has a podcast called Post Mortem with Mick Garris, so if you have the same feels, then here's your chance. Okay, so back to the reason we're here. Mick decides to start having all of his director friends and peers over in 2002 for dinner get-togethers. You know, as you do. Who's on the list? Larry Cohen, Guillermo del Toro, John Carpenter, Tobe Hooper, John Landis, Stuart Gordon, Don Coscarelli, Bill Malone, and Joe Dante. And that is just the first round. Garris is known as the nicest guy in horror, so I'm not surprised that he's the guy who could easily put a shindig like this one together. Then after that, the dinners just kept happening. Garris invited Wes Craven, Fred Dekker, David Cronenberg, William Lustig, Tom Holland, Lloyd Kaufman, Dario Argento, and that's not all of them. During their get-togethers, wheels are spinning. Everyone's talking about the past, present, and future regarding projects. This has got to be pretty inspiring, and it was. Garris essentially got a think tank of horror masterminds together, and we're all quite thankful for that, as well as a bit envious. Not all who were invited participated in Masters. The series debuted on Showtime in 2005. I caught some of the episodes there, then rewatched them when they made their debut on the legendary Chiller channel in 2009. Every time I say Chiller, it's hard to resist talking about the greatness that it once was. I will continue to refrain, but those who know. Also, to be fair, we could have thrown this and Fear Itself together, since Fear Itself is basically the third season just on a different network. However, I would like to do this one later as its own thing. The studio also had the leash a little tighter on this one in regards to creative freedom, but I still think the episodes were enjoyable and worth a retrospective. I must say as well, the music is top tier. The minute I heard Mudvayne in one of the episodes, I was like, yes, this is gonna rock. They actually released a soundtrack for the film series on Immortal Records in October of 2005. And yes, you get some Mudvayne along with Shadows Fall, Mastodon, Thursday, Death by Stereo, The Bronx, Alkaline Trio, and Rise Against. Volume 2 goes just as hard with Cradle of Filth, Lacuna Coil, The Eagles of Death Metal, and Hatebreed. It just made this 17-year-old metalhead in my heart very happy. It's the perfect companion piece. Oh, and you have special makeup effects from the great Greg Nicotero and Howard Berger. Both these guys have a rather impressive resume that includes Evil Dead 2, Misery,
You dirty bird. How could you?
People Under the Stairs, The Walking Dead, Scream, Drag Me to Hell, 13 Ghosts, and we could just keep going. They craft some ghoulish and outright disturbing things here, and it's the gift that keeps on giving. Okay, favorite episodes. Yes, Season 1, front to back, is hard to beat. I haven't yet only chosen from one season, and yet here we are. Dance the Dead, Episode 3. I'm gonna start and end with my favorites. Everything about this is disturbingly enjoyable. From Robert Englund's performance as the MC to Billy Corgan's musical score, to that one part where Jonathan Tucker says,
"You never tell me your name."
Jack. With no C.
I've probably watched this one the most, and it doesn't get old. You've got a script from Richard Christian Matheson based on his father's short story, directed by Tobe Hooper. Everything I've set up to now should indicate you are in for a treat. The story is set in 2018, 10 years after Peggy, played by Jessica Lowndes, friends are killed at her birthday party by a bioweapon called Blizz. She works in a diner for her overprotective mother, and one day winds up playing server to Jack, played by Jonathan Tucker, and his colorful friends. Jack and Peggy become star-crossed lovers of sorts in the apocalypse, and this is where things really begin. The chemistry between Lowndes and Tucker is pretty off the charts at times, and honestly, a lot of it is on Tucker's side. He's just got the whole bad boy with a big heart act down. But don't be fooled, this isn't one of those tales. Each of these entries has their own messed up little centerpiece. This one happens to involve a kink for the undead. Hooper takes a trip into Zombieland and adds his own touches to a chaotic and unstable world. If you haven't seen this one, I really don't want to spoil it for you. The twist is an interesting one, and honestly, I didn't guess it on my first go around. Dreams in the Witch House, Episode 2. I've got this thing for Stuart Gordon. I may also have a thing for the stories of Lovecraft, and as you know already, these two things are intertwined. Funny, this tale was deemed as one of the least popular by Lovecraft and his critics. Lovecraft, among many of us who consider ourselves writers, suffer from poor self-image. No offense to those who identify. So it's no surprise that he didn't see this one for the gem it really is. The story revolves around a grad student named Walter, played by Ezra Godden, who was in Gordon's Dagon, who moves into a cheap, dumpy boarding house. After moving in, he's immediately confronted with strange occurrences like a man going on about a rat with a face. He doesn't think much of this as his head is primarily focused on writing his thesis. Walter befriends the single mom next door after he hears her screaming bloody murder over a rat in her room. Walter also hears the neighbors' crazy chanting as well as strange sounds coming from within his room. What Walter doesn't know is that the room he's staying in was once inhabited by a witch and her familiar. The witch fills his head with nightmares and starts to control his thoughts. One of those thoughts happens to involve ritual sacrifice. At one point you think it's all gonna be okay. I don't have to see that mouse that somewhat resembles Scott Thompson anymore, but then it just bites back. The tale was obviously more modernized for this version, but what's omitted has no effect on the viewer. If anything, it might actually be better. Gordon uses his time here to show us his appreciation and understanding of Lovecraft's work and somehow continues to elevate it. It would have been a reunion of sorts if Jeffrey Combs had been able to play Majewis, but it does happen in the season 2 episode, The Black Cat. However, we're missing Ban this time. By the end of the episode, you feel nothing but dread and hopelessness. Pick Me Up, episode 11. I feel like this one may be the least popular of my choices, but it's one that stuck with me after I watched it and, like the others, is a definite rewatch. It's actually not even the most messed up one. The first thing that gets me here is Fruzvalk, who sadly I feel like we do not see enough of. We actually don't get much of her character in the beginning as we are building our story of the tale of two psychopaths. The magnificent Larry Cohen is at the helm here with a script from David J. Scow, who is one of the screenwriters on The Crow and has written for a few other horror shows including Freddy's Nightmares and Creepshow. He also wrote the third Texas Chainsaw installment. Not sure what your feelings are on that one. The story does center on two dueling sadistic killers, one of the old school and one of the new. Both characters are after a small load of bus passengers that were left on the side of the road after their bus breaks down. The elder, Jim, played by Michael Moriarty, is a seemingly nice truck driver. Funny note, Moriarty plays a character named Jim here, a callback to his character Jimmy in Cohen's Cue the Winged Serpent. He does not blow off his nuts in this one. The other killer is a charismatic cowboy named Walker, played by Warren Cole. Now, Cole you may have seen recently in Yellow Jackets. He plays Jeff, husband to Melanie Lynskey's character Shauna. I did not originally like Jeff, but after the last few episodes, I totally changed my mind. Sorry, Jeff. I can't do Cole dirty like that anyway because he's a fellow Texan. I digress though. This offers more character and less gore. Watching Moriarty and Cole play off one another is quite entertaining. We already knew what Moriarty was capable of and he kind of outdoes himself here. There is gore, but the entry is sort of a break from what we've been through thus far. The eye bleach opportunity, kind of. It's a fun one and hopefully some of you feel the same too. Even though maybe you want Jennifer. I don't, that's a lot. It's a lot. Cigarette Burns, episode 8. Cigarette Burns is a masterful piece from John Carpenter. This has got to be my top entry for Masters. I know Imprint, which we will talk about later, gets a lot of hype, but this one takes it for me. It's a slow burn, but it's an intense one. There's something morbidly intriguing about a form of media that may be cursed. The film at the center of this is titled La Fin Absolue du Monde, The Absolute End of the World, which in its first and only screening caused the audience to go mad. An eccentric wealthy cinephile named Mr. Bellinger, played by Udo Kerr, tasks a rare film dealer, Kirby Sweetman, played by Norman Reedus, to hunt down the only print left of Du Monde. The pacing takes its time with you, but when it catches up, you wonder what depraved act you're going to see next, and then it just keeps coming. This echoes Sweetman's partner Timpson when asked why he adds the cigarette burns.
When you're watching a film and one of those bugs appears, it lets you know? Something's gonna happen. Hold on, here it comes.
I would also be amiss if I didn't mention that Carpenter's son Cody heads up musical duties in this episode, and it's excellent. When this originally came out, several critics called this a return to form, or they were scared it would be like Ghosts of Mars in terms of quality, but Carpenter never lost anything. I mean, Carpenter said it best. It's called Ghosts of Mars, for Christ's sake. Why would anyone take this movie seriously? He was having fun. Not to get on a soapbox, which I'm going to for just a short minute, but can we not just enjoy things? Sometimes our faves crank out potatoes, however, I don't fault them for that. No one should be punished for trying something different, nor should they be accused of falling off. John Carpenter has more talent in his eccentric little pinky toe than you or me combined. Isn't horror about being able to do anything? From campy to serious to the absurd? It all has a place and there's someone who enjoys it. So get in on the horror kumbaya with me, okay? Let's laugh at the weird dumb shit we like together. I have many honorable mentions, which I feel like I need to mention. Basically everything I left out of Season 1. Season 2 had some notable episodes as well, like Family, The Screwfly Solution, The Damn Thing, and The Black Cat. The biggest one we need to briefly discuss is Imprint from Takashi Miike. This episode was supposed to air as the finale and never did. Garris said it was one of the most disturbing films he had ever seen. Mickey does not pull any punches. If you've seen Audition or Itchy the Killer, then you know what you're in store for. Japanese horror contains some of the creepiest shit I have ever seen in my life, and this is across all mediums. Good news is, if this is your bag, then you can watch it in all of its violent glory on DVD, Blu-ray, or Prime. And that leads me to, where can I watch it? You've got several ways to see this one now. It's pretty much free on several streaming platforms if you're cool with occasional ads. The Season 1 box set that came out in 2007 is basically a little mausoleum with all the discs inside. The Season 2 box set is a skull. For those of you who like your physical media, this might be a worthy purchase. There's also a ton of extras and features. You may also enjoy these episodes with the director commentary on, especially if you've seen these before. Gordon's is probably one of the best because of how detail-oriented he is. He's one of my favorites when it comes to commentaries. So, what happened? Where is it now? Showtime decided not to continue the series following the second season. In 2007, it was reported that Lionsgate would be taking over the third season with 13 episodes coming to NBC. Yes, NBC. It was rebranded as Fear Itself and brought on some new directors like Darren Lynn Bousman, Mary Herron, John Dahl, and Larry Fessenden. Jonathan Sketch, who will always be Jimmy from That Thing You Do, actually adapted a few short stories for the third entry. Sadly and predictably, Fear Itself only ran for one season. Lower ratings were the killer for this one. Good news here is that if you want more of the same, you can go check out Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities, which also has its own take on Dreams in the Witch House. IDW also did a comic companion series to some of the episodes. I went to look for those, and it looks like Ben Templesmith did some of the art, and it's pretty wicked. So if you wanted to check out how that translates, there's that option as well. If you had the opportunity to get all of your favorite directors together to create an anthology series, you would absolutely do it. Just being able to sit there in the same room as some of these folks and listen to them talk about what drives them and to hear what they have up their sleeves would be something else. Mick Garris offered up a platform for his peers to do whatever their dark imaginations desired. Some of them stuck to what they did best and others took a different route. The idea was that they had a showcase and the freedom to go all out, and they nailed it. I had been wishing for a bit that we would get a similar style series to this one, and thankfully Cabinet of Curiosities came along. I'm hoping to get another season of that, even though it's kind of up in the air at this point. That all to say, if Garris decided to get all of his friends together again, we'd be all for it. Until next time, my creepy companions.
Horror fans, 11:30 p.m., April 19th, 2021. Reminiscing on Twin Peaks. Binge watching again. Something new strikes me every time, but my feelings for the show become more overwhelming. I've never felt this way about a series before. It made me feel like the ideas I was having when I was writing did have a place in the world. Remind me to tell you about all my favorite scenes and why I think it still holds up after all these years. This show was there for me when I needed it. Oh, horror fans, I almost forgot. We've got to locate a smoked cheese pig. Fascinating. Twin Peaks is one of the most beautifully obtuse dramas ever made. It's also one of those shows that tends to polarize viewers. I was actually talking to one of my close friends about it, and she said, "You know me, should I watch Twin Peaks?" Ultimately, I told her it's a show that people either love or they absolutely do not get. I think it also helps to watch it with someone who loves it, so I said we need to watch a couple of episodes together. Though, I realized the first episode alone will be the seller. In 1986, Mark Frost and David Lynch were set up with their mutual agent. Frost said the meeting was akin to Huck Finn meeting Tom Sawyer, and added that there was this familiar twinkle in Lynch's eye. I can 100% see this playing out in my head, and it's definitely on brand for Lynch. The pair wrote several unused screenplays together. Goddess, a film on Marilyn Monroe, and One Salvia Bubble, a movie that would have starred Steve Martin, before writing what would eventually be a pilot for Twin Peaks. When they finally pitched the series to ABC, Frost described Lynch as using jazzy hand movements and talking about the way the wind whispered in the pine forest in the town. Well, that sounds a lot like Coop if you're asking me. I also realized it's always hard for me to describe what Twin Peaks really is, as there are two types of responses you can get from people who watch it. There are also two different ways to watch it depending on if you want to feel your feelings or if you want to get into the mythology. It's like a soap opera for outsiders who appreciate good cinematography. But let's expand on that thought for a moment. I've seen a few or more soap operas in my time on this earth. Hell, I was named after a character in one of them. Soap operas were likely a staple in your home as a kid. I'm sure you could name one off the top of your head if prompted. As I resonate more with the soap operas of the 80s, there's a special place in my heart for Passions, which was one of the most fantastical of them all. I used to watch it with one of my friends who ranted and raved about it to me. All I know is that one day it seemed like we were watching a typical soap, and then somewhere it spiraled into witches with dolls that had been brought back to life. But wait, when was the last time I saw something this weird and random? It was Twin Peaks. Passions came out in 1999 and owes much of its success to what Twin Peaks did at the beginning of the decade. Circling back, Twin Peaks uses a lot of soap elements when it comes to its writing and character development. This can be directly contributed to Mark Frost, who is an executive story editor and writer for Hill Street Blues. The show even has its own soap within a soap called Invitation to Love. While I think that Frost and Lynch are kind of poking fun at soaps, they're also paying respect. Playing the soap angle with Frost's help, Lynch wanted to dive back into his fascination with Americana and what lurks beneath the belly of picturesque small towns. The biggest piece of inspiration came from the case of Hazel Drew's unsolved murder, which had transpired in Sand Lake, New York, near where Frost had spent summers as a kid. Frost shared the story of Hazel, who was found on the shore of Teal Pond. The story always told to him as sort of a ghost story from Frost's grandmother, who used it as a don't go in the woods sort of scare tactic. Of course, Frost wound up being fascinated with the story. A beautiful girl winds up dead on the edge of the water, she mingled with folks of all social standing, there were multiple suspects, and the crime is still unsolved to this day. Lynch's own film Blue Velvet, as well as a film titled Peyton Place, also served as an inspiration. Peyton Place had Russ Tamblyn in it.
And Tamblyn starred with Richard Beymer in A West Side Story, which was also an influence for Lynch.
6 Degrees of David Lynch is fun. Lynch and Frost are certainly not a pair that seem like the universe brought them together, but they are. Though the show at times has some rather unsettling moments, I've also found that it's comforting. My little weirdo heart appreciates the brie and butter sandwich sniffing, the darker parts of the theme playing over the shot of a stoplight, and listening to Just You for what feels like an eternity. What was interesting for me is that for a show that is so full of secrets, Lynch spills none. He wants people to take it at face value and says that going any deeper ruins what the show is. I myself am guilty of spending nights in forums, especially when The Return was airing. I would stay up for hours just reading people's thoughts on every little thing in each episode. One of the most important aspects, and why it's so beloved, is the collection of actors and actresses that bring the town of Twin Peaks to life. I'm sure all of you have your own favorite characters. For me, it's hard to just nail down one. There are so many performances that make the show so enjoyable, even Frank Silva as Bob. I love Ray Wise as Leland, going off the rails and leading a double life that he himself isn't aware of. There's Sherilyn Fenn, who plays Audrey with this air of coolness and charisma, and it doesn't hurt that she's easily one of the most gorgeous women on the planet. Richard Beymer as Ben Horn is one of the best morally corrupt, slick motherfuckers I've ever seen on the screen. Machen Amick plays Shelley and glows in every scene she's in, and it's easy to see why Lynch sort of fell in love with her on and off screen. Michael Parks fucking nails everything he's ever in and does so playing the role of Jean Renault. Catherine Coulson is so wonderfully weird as the log lady. Kyle MacLachlan has led me to believe that Agent Cooper is not a character, but MacLachlan playing a riff of himself. I could do this for hours. There's Dawn S. Davis, Grace Zabarinsky, Russ Tamblyn, Dana Ashbrook, Harry Goes, Michael Horst, Miguel Ferrer, Jack Nance. Ugh, Jack Nance. Such a precious cinnamon bun, much like Michael Untankian. There are too many amazing performances in this ensemble, and they all deserve any and every bit of praise. Lynch wanted the people of Twin Peaks to shine, and they do so perfectly. While the show deals in dreams, the town of Twin Peaks feels like a dream within a dream. I've been there, because of course I have, and it truly feels like a place separate from the rest of the world. Screw going to Narnia. Deliver me to Twin Peaks. I will gladly dance in the middle of the Double R Diner any day of the week. As Ben Horn said, admiration is for poets and dairy cows. I'm going to start this by saying this will be the hardest show to pick standout episodes for. You could easily just say the first season in its entirety and everyone would nod in agreement. It doesn't get much more solid than that. I said this in one of the previous columns, but I love season 2. When I signed up for Twin Peaks, I signed up for everything. However, I still have somehow managed to narrow it down to a good handful. But between you and me, all the episodes are my favorite. Again, for all my viewers out there, spoilers for an old-ass show ahead. Let's start off with the pilot episode, aka Northwest Passage. There's so many memorable moments in just this one episode. She's dead. Wrapped in plastic. That's a really bad imitation, but you know what I'm getting at. Then things just catapulted from there. The beach scene is forever sketched in the memories of those who saw it. The body wrapped in plastic is turned over, and when Sheriff Truman and Doc Hayward see that it's Laura Palmer, they're both in total disbelief. Even though you're not aware of the character, you feel her importance in those reactions. Her face is still, blue, and somehow peaceful. This coupled with Laura's mom, Sarah, yelling for her at their home, racing up the stairs. Another image that stuck with me after all these years. As the episode goes on, we meet each of the major characters in our cast and how they are affected by Laura's death. We are also gifted with James's facial expressions and Blue Seal preview. Saying that, when we see Donna, Audrey, and James in the classroom, notice how no one else seems to be affected. It's almost like they're emotionless, frozen as if nothing significant has happened. Then there's the introduction of Agent Dale Cooper, who is seen driving his car speaking to a Diane through his recorder. We immediately become enamored with his views on, well, everything. I'm in love with the kinship between Truman and Cooper, as well as the rest of the officers at the Twin Peaks station. There's also a scene between the two when they're inspecting Laura's body, looking for the letter under the fingernail, and the light flickers on and off. This was not a purposeful atmospheric move for Lynch. The lights were actually shitting the bed, so the responses you see in that scene are genuine. We meet Audrey, who is mischief incarnate. The moment when she goes in and tells the Norwegian group the news of Laura just to fuck over her dad is magnificent. Mwah. We get set up with the strife of each of the characters, and it doesn't feel forced in the least. Episode 2, titled Zen, or The Skill to Catch a Killer, is possibly my favorite. Why, you might ask? Jerry Horn and the Brie and Butter Baguettes. Who starts off any episode like this? It's fucking amazing. Nothing makes me giggle like Jerry and Ben fawning over a basic-ass sandwich. Well, it's not basic to them, but you know what I mean. Then there's Dale bringing everyone outside to learn about his love of Tibet and how it's intertwined in his life, along with the deductive technique he learned from them involving mind-body coordination, operating hand-in-hand with the deepest level of intuition. And he gets hit in the head with a rock, and Hawk wearing those oven mitts. What's great about the latter is that Michael Horse, who plays Hawk, questioned why he would be wearing the mitts, to which Lynch said he just thought it would look funny if he wore them. Next, we get to see Audrey dancing to her theme at the Double R. Isn't it too dreamy? What strikes me is that the theme isn't all that dreamy. It definitely starts that way, but like most of Badalamenti's music, there's all these jarring parts that pull you out of that dream state. We get to meet Albert Rosenstein, played by Miguel Ferrer, who is a total asshole and not at all received well by Truman. Nadine's happiness when she finally figures out how to make the drape runners completely silent. Ed, listen.
Completely.
Leland spinning in a circle with Laura's picture, completely losing shit alongside Sarah doing the exact same thing. Last but not least, Cooper's dream. Through the darkness of future past, the magician longs to see one chance between two worlds. Fire, walk with me. Fucking Bob, oh my god. I can't watch this and not be terrified. I've seen these cute pictures of Frank Silva and it just doesn't help. Quit ruining my life, Bob. This has got to be one of the most sinister characters of all time. Can we just play the entire sequence here? That gum you like is going to come back in style. Coop wakes up, calls Truman, and says, I know who killed Laura Palmer. Yes, it can wait till tomorrow morning. What the fuck? The end. Wait a week with that. Season 2, Episode 8, May the Giant Be With You. Season 1 left us with Coop being shot by a masked assailant as he opened his room door at the Great Northern. Season 2 opens up exactly where we left off. Coop is still lying on the floor bleeding out. Then the waiter comes up, or as he's known by the affectionate nickname Albert gave him, Senior Drool Cup, and he brings Coop a glass of warm milk. He reminds Coop to drink the milk, has him sign for the room service, and then says, I've heard about you, while giving a thumbs up. Coop asks for him to call a doc, but this falls flat. The waiter just comes in and out of the room, giving the thumbs up, then eventually just leaves. Then the giant appears to tell Coop 3 things to get him to trust what he's telling him.
I will tell you 3 things.
Where have you come from? The question is, where have you gone? Okay, then cut to crazy-ass Leland beautifully singing, as he does now, and Sarah and Maddie are shocked to see that Leland's hair has turned white. Leland, minutes later, appears at the Great Northern, busting at a song at Ben Horne's office. Jerry starts dancing with Leland, then suddenly Ben jumps on his desk to dance as well. Benjamin Horne is fucking terrible, but I love him. After a meeting with Maddie to give Donna Laura's sunglasses, Donna goes to visit James in jail. Donna tries to be Little Miss Badass wearing Laura's sunglasses indoors in a holding area and proceeds to dry hump the cell bars. As Donna leaves, you can almost hear James thinking in his head, "Mark me down as scared and horny." Lucy and Andy have to go through the backlogs of Flesh World. Then there's that wonderful and heartwarming speech that Major Briggs gives to Bobby about a vision he had. It's hard not to watch it and immediately not want to tear up. Jerry and Ben start talking about weird exotic foods again. The Haywards thought it would be a great idea to have Leland over for dinner, drinks, and entertainment. Then, to my happiness, the giant shows up again to clue Coop in on some things he forgot. He also reminds us, don't search for all the answers at once. Then at the end, we do a deep dive into the seventh circle of hell with Ronette, who had flashbacks of Laura's murder at the hands of Bob, and now I can't fucking sleep. Episode 16, Arbitrary Law. Ugh, poor Maddie got murdered for looking like Laura. This one opens with Albert telling Coop that he has found another one of Bob's signature letters under Maddie's fingernail. Albert pulls Coop aside and tells him, I don't know where this is headed.
But the only one of us with the coordinates for this destination in his hardware is you. Go on whatever vision quest you require. Stand on the rim of the volcano. Stand alone in your dance. Find this beast before he takes another bite.
Coop, discouraged, says,
God help me, I don't know where to start.
To which Hawk wisely replies, you're on a path. You don't need to know where it leads. Just follow. Donna takes Coop to Miss Treeman and little David Lynch's house, but the lady that answers isn't Miss Treeman. When the lady finds out that Donna Hayward is the one at her house, then she goes to retrieve a letter to Donna from Harold. In the envelope is a page from Laura's diary. As Donna is reading the entry, she is recanting Coop's dream, but in this case, it's Laura's dream. At the end, Laura reveals that she knew she was going to die that night. If she dies, then she will not be stalked by Bob anymore. Coop rushes to see Philip Gerard, who is currently off the meds and is in full-on Mike mode. Mike tells Coop that the giant can help him after Coop's ring is mentioned. Later in the evening, Coop brings all suspicious parties to the roadhouse. Here begins the vision quest that Albert mentioned. After a sort of rocky start, Major Briggs enters with the old waiter who flagged Briggs down and asks to be brought to the roadhouse. He gives Coop a piece of gum, then walks over to Leland, who rather proudly states, "Hey, I know that gum. I used to chew it when I was a kid. That's my most favorite gum in the world." Then the waiter says the same words that the man from another place said to Cooper in his dream, which is also one of my favorite lines from the series if you can't already tell. That gum you like is going to come back in style. Then with a flash of lightning, everyone freezes and Coop starts to flash back to his dream where Laura is whispering. Then he finally hears what she said. My father killed me. The giant then appears alone in the room with Coop and gives him back his ring. Coop picks up the ring and everything goes back to normal. Ben Horne is taken back to the station with Leland in tow as Ben's attorney. Everyone heads back to the interrogation room with the idea that Ben will be the one in there. But right before taking him in, Coop shoves Leland in the room and locks the door. Leland then loses his shit, but as we know, it's not Leland, it's Bob. Ray Wise gives a spectacular performance here, which is one of the reasons why the episode is so damn good. The moment when Leland, actual Leland, breaks down and tells the story of how Bob tricked him as a boy, and then details Bob's plans and how he was instructed to kill on Bob's behalf is just heartbreaking. Coop recites the last rites of the Tibetan Book of the Dead and leads Leland into the light where he holds him in his arms. The last bit between Truman, Albert, Coop, and Major Briggs reminds us that it's still not over. Albert muses that maybe that's all Bob is, the evil that men do. Maybe it doesn't matter what we call it. Truman then reminds them the one thing we don't want to remember, that Bob is still out there. Of course, we have to mention the final episode of Season 2, Beyond Life and Death. Wyndham Earle takes off with Annie to Glastonbury Grove and search the entrance to the Black Lodge. Awful shit then starts to happen to all parties involved in the journey at this point. Nadine realizes she's 35 again and that Big Ed has moved on with Norma. The Hayward family gets a kumbaya from a Ben Horne who suddenly decided that he wants to do good things, and those good things involve letting everyone know that he's Donna's actual father. What a swell guy. Audrey gets her buns exploded at the bank where she's protesting trying to screw her dad over again. This time the idea was bad. Cooper then takes a journey to Glastonbury Grove to the circle of trees to save Annie. I always loved the imagery of the location in the woods. Truman watched Cooper disappear into the red curtains, then patiently waits for him. When Coop enters, Jimmy Scott starts crooning Sycamore Trees. He finds his way to the man from another place who tells him that when he sees him again, it won't be him, hint hint, and that the rest of his psychic friends are all hanging out in the lodge too. Laura, Old Waiter, the Giant. Laura tells Coop she'll see him again in 25 years. Then shit just goes off the hinges. Not that it wasn't already, but this is true nightmare fuel. Honestly, if the last 15 minutes of this episode doesn't haunt you in some way, then you probably are Bob. Coop spends most of his time going from room to nearly same room in the lodge. Fucking demonic Laura comes in and just screams. Thanks, Maddie, for the warning, but it didn't help. Fuck, it's Laura again just screaming, crawling over a gossip chair, and it's coming right for us. Annie and Carolyn show up with Wyndham Earl, and it's like, I'll spare Annie if you give me your soul. Then Bob, the king of all souls, comes in and makes Wyndham Earl his bitch. Wow, Bob, wow. Bob tells Coop that Wyndham Earl can't take anyone's soul, and since he was a big fibber, now Bob is going to take his soul. But before we think it's all over, because of course it has to keep going, a doppelganger Coop shows up and starts demonically laughing with Bob and chasing after Coop. One of the last scenes in the lodge is Doppelcoop grabbing actual Coop. Then suddenly we're outside again and we see Annie and Coop lying on the ground. The very last scene is perhaps one of the most memorable. Cooper is back laying in his bed at the Great Northern asking about Annie. Everything seems in order until Coop says he needs to brush his teeth. He goes to the bathroom, wastes an entire tube of toothpaste, then proceeds to slam his head into the mirror. We see him pull away with a bloodied face, and looking back in the mirror at him is Bob. Coop then turns to the camera, laughs, and mockingly says, "How's Annie?" more than a handful of times. And that's it. All of us are officially insane now.
How's Annie? How's Annie?
When was the last time you heard about a TV show like this?
So how does this all end? ABC wanted Lynch and Frost to name Laura's killer, even though neither wanted that so soon. What we got was a reveal early in season 2, and then the mainstream audience sort of started to lose interest.
What else is on?
Yeah, let's see what else.
Where's the TV guy?
Lynch and Frost did not have as much control as they did in season 1, and with season 2 we had less involvement from the pair. Even though who killed Laura Palmer became one of the biggest questions since Who Shot JR, the creators looked at the killer as a MacGuffin, with the unique inhabitants of the town being the center of the show. Lynch never wanted to reveal Laura's killer, even though he and Frost knew all along who it was. Frost thought the audience deserved to know who the killer was, and all this disagreement created a wedge between the two. Don't worry, they're still good pals, but a team of creative minds can run into some walls or red curtains sometimes. The murder was solved, the interest was lost. It was over. It was probably a good thing though. I think dragging it on would have made the show lose the quirky charm that it had. I know we selfishly want to have a show we love last forever, but you see the damage that can be done when that happens. Also, please in the comments tell me about a show that you loved that you thought lasted for too long. I'm curious. In 1992, Fire Walk With Me was released as a prequel film to the events that took place in the series. It told the story of Teresa Banks in the days before and leading up to Laura's murder. Most of the cast had come back on board except for Laura Flynn Boyle and Sherilyn Fenn. Boyle was replaced by Moira Kelly. Kyle MacLachlan is also in the film, but only in a smaller capacity due to his concerns with being typecast. Frost ended up dropping out over the direction of the film, whether it should be a sequel to the series or center on Laura. The prequel unfortunately was not well received with audiences. I mean, that is one movie that stands out for me in terms of how it got reviewed. It got booed after it screened at Cannes. Booed! But what was interesting is that the movie completely and utterly sets up season 3, which we will get to shortly. When Twin Peaks originally debuted on ABC, those who knew the work of Lynch wondered how the hell his work could possibly play for a regular audience. While help from Frost made this transition not only great, but palatable for normies, Lynch was still held back in many regards. Fire Walk With Me gave Lynch all the control he wanted to go as far outside the box and into outer space as he wanted. Those who were fans of Lynch and Twin Peaks knew that the film would possibly be unsettling and less humorous. The only thing that threw things off for me was Donna being recast. While Moira Kelly cannot be expected to be an exact replica of Boyle, it just doesn't work. I wanted to see Boyle as Donna playing off of Lee's tortured Laura. Both actresses have been on screen together, but Lee playing Maddie is quite a different experience. Don't feel too bad for Fire Walk With Me though. It's actually had a reversal in reviews. Critics have viewed the film in a different light, and paired with season 3, it gives viewers a different way to look at it. Essentially, it became the key to the Twin Peaks universe. This leads me directly into season 3 of Twin Peaks, which has us back as Laura said we would be 25 years later. However, things are very, very different. Lynch and Frost had free reign with Showtime to go buck wild, similar to Fire Walk With Me, except Frost got on board this time. They dropped a 400-page script to the network, and that should tell you everything you need to know. Real talk here. This season needs its own column. As I was saying before, there's so much material we could get into and theorize over. Here's the cheap and shortened summary. Coop winds up being stuck in the Black Lodge after pursuing Wyndham Earl. Bob is released into the world as Doppelganger Coop and does some really terrible shit. The happiest ending is that of Big Ed and Norma, who deserve a send-off into the sunset. What else do we randomly drop here that would start us down a rabbit hole? The fact that there is possibly 3 to 5 universes created within the series. On my last count it was 3, but there's evidence that there are 5, or at least the idea of 5. The convenience store and the reoccurrence of Garbanzo, the woodsman, Philip Jeffries returning in the form of a tea kettle? The arm, the Dragon Ball-like drag out from Dougie to Coop. Hello? Janie E. Numerology. Wally Brando. Thanks, Michael Cera. Poor fucking Audrey. The glass cube which released the experiment, who is possibly a form of Judy, aka Jowdy, and made me think that Lynch has paired up with Aphex Twin to do some kind of nightmare project. This idea is not open or available. Was Sarah Palmer inhabited by Judy this whole time? Also, the glass cube is a particularly interesting device that is plopped right down in front of us and is never really explained. Was Doppelcoop hoping to trap Good Coop? Was it a gateway between universes? Can I scrub any of that out of my brain? That whole scene in the movie theater, the atomic bomb is the creation of Bob? Diane fucking shows up and it's Laura Dern, and the character's personality isn't at all what I expected. Then, before it's all over, Diane and Coop bang? Oh, and there's no Harry S. Truman. There's Robert Forrester, who is cast perfectly as his brother, and seeing Forrester always warms my heart. However, it's hard to call Twin Peaks without Harry. Also, leave Tammy alone, you mouth breathers. After all this, we're left with Coop Richard and Laura Carey. They come back to Twin Peaks, only this isn't Twin Peaks, or at least not the one we recall. Laura is never freed from her own tragedy. She seems to be tasked with living it over and over again. I think with the theme of multiple universes and time travel, all of us would be hard-pressed not to try to correct any wrongdoings in our own lives. Everyone has that one moment they wish they could prevent from happening, but we can't. I wonder if we can apply this quote from Nietzsche. To live is to suffer. To survive is to find some meaning in the suffering. Shovel your way out of the shit. So, where are we now? How do I get more Twin Peaks? Well, the most recent news is that Lynch is doing another show for Netflix, which is tentatively titled Wisteria. No one knows if this is a Twin Peaks spinoff or not, but Kyle MacLachlan and Michael Horst have tweeted about it. Ooh. Lynch is normally super secretive with his projects, so no matter what it is, I will be waiting sort of patiently. You can watch the original run of Twin Peaks on Netflix. The return is on Showtime anytime only. Boo. There were also several companion books, The Secret History of Twin Peaks and Twin Peaks, The Final Dossier, both by Mark Frost. There's also The Secret Diary of Laura Palmer, written by Lynch's daughter, Jennifer. You can also check out the autobiography of Special FBI Agent Dale Cooper from Scott Frost, brother of Mark. Twin Peaks opened the door for a ton of other little weirdo shows. They said, here's the format, let's distort it, move it backwards, and let's try to get people invested while also not scaring them enough that they want to come back. They broke the audience in a good way. It challenged and pushed the line for horror shows to come. We were all invested in Laura's life as well as the mythology. This paved the way for several other shows. X-Files, Q Major Briggs and Denise Bryson, Fix Your Hearts or Die, Gravity Falls, Desperate Housewives, Psych, Q half of the cast, Riverdale, Bates Motel, The Killing, Northern Exposure, Veronica Mars, Hannibal, Broadchurch, True Detective, Lost, and the list goes on and on. It even inspired games like Alan Wake, Link's Awakening, and Silent Hill. Hell, it inspired my life. With that said, Twin Peaks changed a lot within us on how we watch TV. Lynch and Frost left us with so many somethings to dissect for the rest of our lives. Believe me, even on my rewatch, I found new threads to go down and spend hours of my time with. Maybe I also need to find a support group. Twin Peaks didn't spare us anything and dared to do things no one else would even imagine. When I say I miss Twin Peaks, I mean it deep in my soul. So until I see you in the trees, remember the owls are not what they seem. So let's rock.
This will officially be the shortest series that we cover. Maybe you've seen it. Maybe it feels like a dream. If you've watched Chiller or Sci-Fi, then it's likely you caught this one as they would run marathons of it. Touch that remote and you die.
Touch that remote and you die.
It's time to visit the Nightmare Cafe. Sadly, it wasn't until 2009 that I actually knew this existed. If I knew then what I knew now, I would have tried to save it. I'm not sure that me and a group of 5 people would have been enough, but it's the spirit that counts, right? I wanted to share this one with all of you because I think it deserves a little more love than it's gotten. So, what's a Nightmare Cafe? Well, only special folks are chosen to work in the cafe. Have a little accident? Need a second chance to prove you weren't a total piece of garbage? Do you have the skills to work alongside Freddy Krueger? Not unless you're Nancy fucking Thompson.
You're nothing.
Okay, here you don't have to have those skills. I'm sorry if I've disappointed anyone who has charismatic sleep specialist on their resume.
Whatever you do, don't fall asleep.
So, Robert Englund is Blackie, the keeper of a cafe at the edge of town. The cafe is sort of a living, breathing entity of sorts, so you can't piss it off or it will set your coffee on fire. No, not in the McDonald's lawsuit sort of way, more like massive flamage. Greater forces at work enlist 2 very undead employees, Faye and Frank. With the help of the cafe and at times Blackie, they're able to help poor unfortunate souls to navigate the trouble they find themselves in, and hopefully redeem them. You might say to yourself, Nikki, this isn't very Wes Craven-y. Well kids, neither was Music of the Heart, but I still watched that. You gotta stick with the team whether they win or lose. Okay, sure, it's not straight horror, but it does offer something a little different from the guy who could have written or directed a horror movie in his sleep. It gets a pass. Craven came up with the idea with his son Jonathan when they were toying with the concept of a show akin to Twilight Zone and Amazing Stories. He wanted to have the characters bookend each episode while still maintaining the anthology aspect. This was retooled before it was pitched to NBC, as Craven wanted the characters to be the center of the story. Originally, when it was presented to NBC, they turned it down, and when the president of NBC at the time offered to cut it down, Craven was understandably upset. They wound up reworking it, bringing the time down to an hour and a half, and Craven was actually happy with the result. Well, why do we love it? When this came on, I immediately got sucked in. Once I had marathoned all 6 episodes, I was left with that what the fuck, why feeling. Often this does not happen to me. The last time I got this upset was when they canceled Channel Zero. Let people be weird for the love of God. This had a different feeling to it. Sure, by Wes Craven's description, it was Twilight Zone meets Cheers.
Gee, that's hard to believe.
But for good measure, it was also Quantum Leap and Moonlighting, if you can imagine such a thing. It could have easily been Doctor Who, as the cafe was like the TARDIS and could manifest wherever souls were in dire need. While the show was an anthology, it also had its 3 main characters. As time goes on, we get to know a little bit more about the characters, though it would have been nice if the series had continued, that we would get a little bit more on Englund's character, Blackie. Anytime Englund is on screen, he immediately draws light into the room, and it's unfortunate that he didn't get to do more with the character. Don't get me wrong. I love Lindsay Frost and Jack Coleman as well, but Robert Englund can't help but be the life of any party he attends. The role of Blackie at the time had pulled Englund away from the dark pit that was playing Freddy. He even mentions in an interview that he laughed on set one day and part of his Freddy voice slipped through. As a fan of Englund, seeing his lighter side is always kind of a trip, like playing Willie in V. Seeing him as Professor Wexler in Urban Legends was pretty great as well. Anyway, this isn't a Robert Englund love video, though it should be. Oh, and this one also has a pretty cool intro.
Now that I've got your attention, here's the deal.
This is one of those shows that you watch and you either don't care that the concept is a little much, or you'll watch anything Wes Craven does. Either way, you can't lose in my opinion. Time for my favorite episodes. Pilot. You ever watch something and you aren't sure what's going on, and it may not even make sense, but you're still completely intrigued and zoned in? Yeah, that's the episode for me, and actually most of them. I'm just here for the ride. Let me say, this one was directed by the great Philip Noyce, who you know from Dead Calm, The Saint, the badassdom of Harrison Ford as Jack Ryan in Clear and Present Danger, as well as Patriot Games. We start with 2 people, complete strangers who have found themselves crawling out of the same body of water. Frank, played by Jack Coleman, spots a lovely woman in a red dress just as drenched as he is and says, "I thought you drowned. You okay?" She sees this as a come on, and here our dynamic begins. The cafe suddenly appears, drawing them both inside. Robert Englund pops up, unbeknownst to us as our narrator and possible minion of the afterlife himself, Blackie. He's rooting against them from the beginning, while they spend the episode rooting for each other. From here, Frank and Faye, played by Lindsay Frost, sister of Mark Frost, who we know from Twin Peaks, just sort of assumes their roles of cook and waitress at the cafe. Things only continue to get weird from there. After Faye changes into her uniform, she hears crying and opens the mirror to see a reflection of herself, bawling her eyes out, rifling through a medicine cabinet. Meanwhile, Frank turns the TV on in the cafe and sees Faye changing. He turns it off before it gets too racy. When she comes back into the drab 50s diner, the TV comes back on and reveals how they both got dumped in the harbor. This episode is pivotal as it gives us the initial background on the characters, as well as how they are connected, and shows us how each episode of the series will play out. Joan Chen, also from Twin Peaks, pops in at the end and we never see her again. Just wanted to let you know in case you got your hopes up. Faye and Ivy. This one centers on Faye's little sister Ivy, played by Molly Parker. Ivy has an incredibly terrible and abusive boyfriend who we think at the beginning is going to be alright, but we should have known better. We find out he's in the relationship with Ivy because he thinks Faye may have a butt ton of cash. Ivy wanted to see her sister, whom she seems to idolize due to these glamorous letters she's been writing. It's been almost 10 years since they've seen each other. If you watch the first episode, again, important, you know that's all a farce, but at the time of writing the letters, Faye doesn't know that. I do have questions on this one, like, why didn't we guess the boyfriend was a turd? To, why does Blackie still go through with the tattoo on Ivy after she's extremely hesitant? Or, most important, why doesn't Faye reveal sooner that she's Ivy's sister? And why can't Ivy tell that's her sister? Maybe she got that Carla Gugino son-in-law makeover. Despite these burning questions on my behalf, we do start to understand more about Faye. I can understand why she's hesitant to tell her sister, as life didn't turn out the way she wanted. However, the cafe does allow her the chance to save her sister and bring them together with their mother, who winds up being kind of a boss. Oh, I love Molly Parker, but her run as Alma on Deadwood was so good that I probably said some not so nice things about her character at my TV. The Heart of the Mystery. This is as close to horror as this series gets. As you all already know, it didn't get a chance to go this route again, so we'll forgive this. This is a whodunit of sorts centering on a cop played by Timothy Carhart, who has to solve the mystery of who killed his love before a bullet fatally wounds him. Note, this one also is the closest in tone to Twilight Zone for me due to the noir aspect. This is one of the best in regards to writing and acting. Each one of the actors chews through the scenery on this one, and it's a good indicator of what could have been in store down the line. I'm struggling whether I should tell all of you who's the shooter in this one. If it wasn't for its obscurity, I would have spoiled it by now. But I think it's best to have this teaser to bait you to watch. For me, it was pretty obvious, but I had my doubts for quite a bit of the episode. The last 10 minutes are nightmare fuel for sure. It's also interesting to note how very Mulder and Scully that Frank and Faye are. Especially since this was before the X-Files debuted. My dude Lachlan Monroe, who is recently in the oh-so-amazing Peacemaker and basically every other movie show on the planet, is in this one playing a total creeper. Aliens Ate My Lunch. This was the only episode written and directed by Craven. It's also the oddball of the bunch. However, the only thing I need to sell you on this is Lieutenant Briggs, cows getting abducted by aliens, and Robert Englund doing his best Farmer Joe. Is this horror? Absolutely not. It's sci-fi comedy. It's a missing X-Files episode. Oh, and it's probably the weakest of the series. But it's so weird and wild and you have to see it just to say that you did. I'm not entirely sure this episode would get airtime today. Look, if you haven't seen this or if this is your first time hearing about it, please go check it out, or at least as much of it as you can. Let me know if you dug it, and even if you don't, because we're cool with everyone's opinions here. Now, where do I find it? Nowhere. You literally find 4 episodes and it ruins your goddamn life? Okay, if I found 4 episodes, it's somewhere. You do a little Google search and you'll get up to episode 4. There are some sites that offer the others, but unless you want to end up spending your weekend getting hijacked by some dude who watched too much Hackers and says he needs $3K to free the hostage that is your computer, then just stay away and wallow in your sadness. Or, Patrick, upload the other episodes from your VHS collection. Quit teasing us. That's it.
My hope is that MGM stops holding the series hostage since they never officially released it, and that ends up on Shudder or Screambox or literally any streaming site. It's only 6 episodes, come on. It barely existed when it's on air, and now we're just trying to erase it. Well, guess what, buddy? We won't let that happen. But seriously, Patrick, help me out. You promised us like 3 months ago. We don't want to buy any bootleg DVDs from the back of some guy's 93 Honda Civic. How it ended. Sadly, Nightmare Cafe got the rug pulled out from under it rather quickly. Word is there was a writer's strike at the time, and when it was over, folks just didn't go back. I've also seen it was due to declining ratings, but what isn't at this point? There are several reasons to miss the show. The biggest reason being that it never got a real shot. Now I have to sit here and wonder what could have been. Do Frank and Faye ever realize they're a great couple? Does Robert Englund just freaking snap one day and when watching the diner TV says, "Welcome to prime time, bitch"? Guess what? We'll never know. It's gonna be one of those things that people just say, "Oh yeah, I think I remember that." But the show just doesn't get its proper dues. What I admired most about Wes Craven was the care with which he had for his audience, and how he knew they deserved more than surface horror, which isn't always bad, but the psychological aspect of his works were always what drove me to his films. If allowed to run longer, it's possible it could have grown to become an even better show, maybe one that lasted longer than half a season. It's funny to think that Freddy's Nightmares lasted longer, and we saw what happened with that one, even though we dearly love it. Nightmare Cafe will always be lost somewhere between time and eternity, and will forever leave me with a feeling of what could have been. Until next time, my creepy companions.
Punk got off easy, if you ask me.